Thank you, Dr. Sanders. Hoping for a lot of, oh, there's one right there. I'm just going to cut across.
I am Polish, the real Polish, not the Western Polish. I am very surprised that you use Poland. I hope you do realize that when I was growing up for over 50 years, Catholic Church has no legal status in Poland. From 45 to 1998, the marriage in Catholic Church was not recognized. The priests were not offered any salaries, any, insurance, anything. And I can, these are the two things I remember. I'm sure there's a lot of them. So I am just so surprised that you brought that in Poland, in the Constitution, there were the holidays, put, and they kind of supreme Catholic religion over others. I also want to make sure that that 99.99 people were Catholic in Poland when I was growing up. There was very little other minorities, which was very different than used to be. I am from a place when it was Jewish town before World War II. So, yes, 50 years.
Yes, well, I mean, a few things I would say to that. One is that in pointing to the one provision of the agreement between Rome and New Poland in 1992, I think the treaty was, I certainly did not mean to say that, well, and so we can look and find in Poland we've had and continue to have an ideal state. Knowing that the Holy See has various agreements with this particular provision in mind, and they continue even in places without a concordat, German-speaking territories. I turned to Poland for one place I guessed I could find the treaty, and it was translated on the Holy See's website. So, the Italian one is just in Italian.
It was 93, then it was held hostage until 98. Did not get signed officially. And I know, because I know when my family members were getting married, and they first needed to have a civil marriage before they could have Catholic marriage, because the Catholic was still not recognized. Just like birth certificate was not recognized, just like a lot of other things were not recognized.
Right, yes. So again, not pointing to the overall situation of implementation, what I was focused on is what will the church who upholds religious liberty still acknowledge as some sort of enshrinement within law as appropriate?
How about if the culture is deeper than political system? Do you know what is the word for Sunday in Russian?
I do not know.
Воскресенье. Do you know what this means?
I do not.
Resurrection. Do you know what is the word for Sunday in Polish, Slovakian, and Czech? Especially Polish and Slovakian, is niedziela. That means you do not work. Bad words, that common law, common situation goes all the way to, 8th, 9th century, when the words formed the culture, and the culture was what was going on. This is why it's Воскресенье in Russia. And no matter how many years the communists were there, it's still Воскресенье. And in Poland, it's still niedziela. That means you do not work.
And that's a great triumph of the church.
The interesting thing is that in so many languages, the Sabbath is Sabbath. No matter what language it is, it's Sabbath. It's Sobota, Sabbath. It starts at least with S in majority of the languages.
Yes, thank you.
We've got another question right back here.
Aaron, thank you for being here tonight. One of the things that has always struck me about Vatican II and its providential place in history is exactly my experience of places like Poland and Italy that do have, at least now, a semi-confessional state, is that it really seems to be very bad for religion. Spain under Franco was ostentatiously Catholic, and the pushback now that they've liberalized has become, really fanatically anti-Catholic. Italy, where they have religious education in every school, public schools, they have no faith, and you have 50 years of Poland being anti-Catholic officially, the government, the communist government, and I actually think that the Catholic faith did better in Poland under the communists than it's doing now under a Catholic regime. And so it really seems like, from a prudential point of view, like I agree with everything you said theoretically, but actually in practice, it seems like we do better when we're not in charge, or at least we're not imposing, using the mechanisms of power, the faith on other people. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, a few things there, and one of them is, I did say, I wanted to explore the continuity precisely so that we can ground it and be able to affirm quite robustly what Vatican II is teaching, that this is in fact in agreement with everything that previous popes said about the need of the freedom to embrace the faith. So looking for ways in which we might uphold that that mandate still offered by the Council to have the gospel imbue even laws. I said quite particularly that no one rush out and try to do more than what the Church's authority is telling us to do now. But searching beyond that, then to say, well, I mean, if you don't impose a duty and then say, and you're not allowed to fulfill it whatsoever. So that's why I wanted to search around, what is, one of these weak ways that still the Church might have shown us is acceptable. So, yes, not going out and saying, well, obviously things would just be better with a confessional state, look at all these statements in favor of it, but saying, considering that we're told we still have a duty to somehow make the gospel felt within our civic life, what is the Church saying is the means to fulfill that? So that's why I'm looking in that direction. But at the same time, as poorly as the Church has fared in the confessional states of old Europe, I don't know that means the countervailing message is so the Church definitely does better in fully secular states either. There's plenty of secular states where the Church is doing quite poorly. The Church is maybe strongest in Nigeria, where much like Poland under more than one occupying tyranny held strong to the faith, but that doesn't mean that those are a better model, for structuring the government. So looking at results should guide our prudence, but I think looking overall, it's best to step back and say, there's still some duty incumbent upon Catholics to make the gospel, divine law, imbue this society, not just, again, in a diffuse way, but bring it to bear somehow on the laws and structures of the community. So what will that look like? Yeah, prudentially, especially when you're a small minority, it's not going to look like a confessional state. But we shouldn't just say, so then the duty is completely lapsed. I think it challenges our creativity to say, working within the constraints, the good self-restraint of not imposing the faith on others, what does this not just request, but sort of imposition from the Church still have to say to us? We can't just throw up our hands. We ought to look and take up the challenge to figure out a means.
You got all the big guns tonight.
Aaron, that was a brilliant talk. Everything you do is brilliant, so thank you.
Thank you.
And before I ask my question, I want to give a commercial for Aaron. Most people don't know what a tremendous resource Aaron is. As the Office of Divine Worship, we get advice from him on a daily basis, and we can really be assured that we're doing things the right way in cases of doubt, and we always seem to be in cases of doubt. Aaron's there, and he'll give you an answer, and it makes sense, and he'll cite you to the authorities, and then you move on. So you're a tremendous resource. If you're a tenth as helpful to the other parishes, you're doing a great job. Here's my question. As I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about these cases that have arisen in the past 10 or 15 years where the church organizations and even the bishops have been litigating questions of religious liberty. For instance, Obamacare required sisters to cover abortions, and the bishops chose to couch their argument in terms of religious liberty. Don't make us do this because it's against our religion. And I'm thinking, it's not against your religion to kill babies. It's wrong. Don't make us do this because it's wrong. And you mentioned that there's a duty for us to couch things in natural law terms when possible. I think it's really, they won these cases on religious liberty grounds as if the only reason we don't kill our children is because God told us not to. But if he forgot to tell us not to, it would be just fine. So what do you think about that?
Well, that is the sort of thing that I had in mind by saying, don't be afraid to argue for things because they're good. That's something we can do personally. It's something we can do corporately, precisely because when you lean entirely into religious liberty as a good, but defined as the freedom for everyone to follow his or her conscience, that's where you start stripping away any ground for communal action, reason, discourse, insofar as Leo, in saying that reason alone isn't going to be fit to run a society here under conditions of the fall, he says, again, I'm paraphrasing, if we don't have some shared substantive commitments, to what is truly good and moral, if we're all just trying to figure out what everyone around the table can agree, this doesn't violate one or another special belief of mine, then eventually you run out of any shared commitments and you're left with rule by force alone. So, what we have to say will be a disagreement, but unless people are willing to step forward and say, well, we ought to do this, or we ought to refrain from this because it is good or because it is evil, eventually really we're just having a contest to see who gets to hold the sword as opposed to how that sword ought to be wielded for justice. So again, there's pragmatic considerations, like if that is going to secure a proper freedom more effectively, that's our shot to argue in those terms. Well, then I perfectly understand doing it. But if that pragmatic calculation steers us in that direction every single time, eventually we're undercutting the principled foundations of our civic life. And we're verging closer and closer to, since no one can agree, I guess someone's just going to have to be in charge.
Thank you very much. I love the fact that you gave us real pragmatic advice, do this, do this, do this. Because this is where I come from. This is, near and dear to my heart. But I wanted to ask you about the rights of free speech and what happens when religious convictions clash other people's rights to free speech. So, for example, if I hold something sacred and others don't, what are my obligations? What are my duties towards the other party's freedom and towards my convictions for my own religious beliefs?
Could you give me an example, maybe?
Have you read the Detroit Press recently?
I've never read the Detroit Press, to my knowledge. So
Maybe that's a good thing, okay? Just a real quick summary.
Yeah.
There was an offensive painting at Grand Valley where Our Lady of Guadalupe had a gun to her head and an X across the front. And some Catholic students went to administration first, and now they've taken it to the media. And so I'm wondering, what's our response to this? You know, some people say, make sure that, you know, people have the right to free speech, and other people say, this is offensive to me. What do we do?
Right. I don't think I have any great answers for free speech laws, and obviously I live in a cave, so I have no idea what's going on there. But I mean, ultimately, taking our orientation from the Council and Post-Conciliar Magisterium, even when others are abusing their liberty, our response needs to be one of, you know, dignity and respect even for the person in error. So sometimes the proper response is simply turning the other cheek. You know, again, I didn't come out and say, now I'm going to tell you all this so I can now set up religious coercion somewhere. But I do think, you know, the church has long taught that if someone truly is abusing a freedom simply to heap scorn on others in a disrespectful way, you know, it's one thing to air disagreements, and it's another thing to do it in an intentionally contemptuous way that we needn't, even though we're Americans with our very robust free speech norms in our Constitution, we needn't stand back and say, well, you know, I guess all fine and good, you know, all bets are off, everyone gets to say what they want. I think it would be fine to push towards, you know, quite carefully, but greater restraints on speech precisely to maintain it within those bounds of respect for others with whom we disagree.
I got a question right here, but before I hand it over, this is yes or no from me. I normally don't ask questions, but I need a yes or no. Just yes or no. Freedom of religion, as we understand as Americans constitutionally, is different than what we understand religious liberty to be, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You don't have to go into that
okay.
too long, but I think some questions might be tending toward a presupposition from that understanding.
Well, and I'll say one of the ways to disentangle this is, and one of the ways to overcome some seeming contradictions within teachings is that it's one thing to say that, you know, it is positively good that anyone can just, you know, pursue whatever convictions they've come to by whatever means. And I think that is somewhat baked into the bog standard American understanding of things. Whereas the church says, no, religious freedom is, you know, it's a negative freedom in terms of yeah, everyone, regardless of how much they disagree with the faith, is still actually morally bound to assent to it. So it's not a positive God-given liberty to, you know, be an atheist, but it is a negative liberty. It's protection of the conditions around you that will hopefully enable you to freely assent to the faith later on. The American system is functionally agnostic, and it says precisely because no one can determine what religious beliefs are true, we can't let them interfere with the practical business of our common life. And that one is actually a theological statement, because the state then determines what is religious and what is not. So it's setting up a competing authority, but also the notion that what my neighbor believes about, you know, some metaphysical conviction doesn't break my leg or pick my pocket. It may be true to some extent, although ideas have consequences, but also, we don't have that positive right to pursue things in that way, because if my neighbor's beliefs actually convince me to fall away from the truth, he's done me a greater injury than if he merely broke my leg or picked my pocket. So, always we're striving for balance and upholding the fundamental human freedom to follow one's conscience where the truth seems to be leading, but doing so in such a way that we don't fall into that American agnosticism.
Thank you.
The desecration of the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe deserves a more robust response, and there is a group of people this Saturday at 1 o'clock who are going to be praying 15 decades of the Rosary at the Cook Carolyn Tower. So if you're all free Saturday at 1, this is a very worthy cause. We as Catholics can proclaim our faith in the public square.
Thank you.
I got time for one more. I know everyone's okay with that. You'll stay for a little while and answer questions, so we'll do that, and then those that need to go can go, but we'll do one more. Don't crucify me, okay? So I'll pick this one just randomly. It's not Darwinistic, it's totally by chance.
And perhaps a lightweight question too. Your euphemism, the continuity of disruption, is that your euphemism or somebody else? That was hysterical, by the way. I want a t-shirt with that.
I didn't even, I've got bad ears. What phrase did I hopefully deploy very, very slyly?
Continuity of disruption.
Oh, no, I don't think I said continuity of disruption. Oh yes, hermeneutic of rupture. That's just Benedict right there, yeah.
We'll take one more. We'll take one.
Well, I was the wrong person to ask to do that. I'm going to follow up on Joe. I have a lot of questions about clarifications and nuances about the topic, but what I want to say right now is to express my gratitude to you, Dr. Sanders, in your position in the diocese. You are, in some very real sense, a guardian angel for certain aspects of religious practice in this diocese. And I wanted to say personally and on behalf of this community, thank you for what you are doing.
Man, that was the easiest coast out I've ever gotten.
That was pretty amazing. That was a really good coast out. Oh, if we could give Dr. Sanders a nice big last round of applause, that'd be great.